Welcome back to Living Scripture, our weekly meetings to live, to become more living, and to realize how the ancient revelation from the sacred traditions, the sacred texts, remains vibrant, remains updated, remains unfolding, remains relevant and important to our everyday life. So in that connection today, I would like to share a very interesting line. In this case, it doesn't come from a particular verse. It's not a verse per se, but it's a commentary to one verse in one line, coming from Srila Sanatana Goswami and his Bṛhad Bhāgavatāmṛta. So in his commentary to verse 110, he says, sarva-pramāṇānāṁ madhye'nubhava-pramāṇasya śreṣṭhayāt. This is the line. The translation, as you may suspect, says, amid all pramānas, or means of knowing, the best is the pramāna of experience, pratyaksha, or anubhava. So this is a very important line. I've spoken about that many times repeatedly, which seems to be contradiction or counterintuitive to other forms of expressions in our tradition, in particular when we say the topmost pramāna or the topmost means of knowing in the Gaudiya Vaishnava particular tradition is shabda, revealed knowledge, and that means scripture, shastra. So pratyaksha or anubhava, personal experience, generally is relegated to the last one, at least in the eyes of some, right? To the point like you are not enlightened, so your experience doesn't count much. How much you can trust what you are experiencing. Your senses, what your senses are telling you, what your mind is telling you, if it's not under control, your experience needs to be aligned with Shastra. And Shastra will tell you, or Guru will tell you how to think, what to think. And in one sense, we are not entirely against that argument, but I will say that the experience of revelation, the experience of Guru, still is our experience of all that. And that's why here Srila Sanatana Goswami is mentioning, from all pramānas, sarva-pramāṇānāṁ, considering all means of knowing, sometimes summarizes, as I say, pratyaksha, anuman, inference, and shabda, revelation, sound, sacred sound. Chamadhye, among all these, anubhav, which is another way of saying pratyaksha, anubhav means personal experience, pramāṇasya śreṣṭhayāt. So śreṣṭha means the topmost, the best. The best of all pramānas, the best of all means of knowing is our personal experience. So what's the meaning of this? How that this does not contradict what Jiva Goswami says in Tattva Sandarbha, speaking about epistemology, how do we know what we know? And he emphasizes Shabda, divine sound, revealed scripture, and Srimad Bhagavatam in particular. But interestingly, again, when we know the Srimad Bhagavatam, what's Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll say that's Shabda. Yes, but that's also pratyaksha. That's also anubhav. That's personal experience. That's Vyasadev's personal experience, personal samadhi through which the Bhagavatam was revealed. Jiva Goswami refers to that as Vaidusha Pratyaksha. Personal experience, enlightened personal experience, unfiltered, so to say, without the filters of material conditioning, which will be Avaidusha Pratyaksha, personal experience, unenlightened personal experience. So, okay, we are not enlightened, so we cannot fully trust absolutely everything we are saying, thinking, perceiving. That's fine. We are totally fine with that. Of course, we have to be careful not to take that and cancel absolutely whatever we are saying, thinking, feeling, and willing, and reducing that to zero, because that's not healthy either. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes the narrative is you are conditioned being, so you cannot trust any of your thinking, feeling, willing. So you have to trust what this book says, what this math teacher says. But again, that begs the question, so how do I know that what that book says is correct? How what that teacher says is real, is beneficial for me? if I just accept that blindly, that's blind following. That's nothing very substantial. That may be the beginning of another new cult. So what takes me to trust in revealed scripture as such? Why do I even conclude thinking, okay, there's something called revealed scripture. There's something called a saintly person. How do I know that person is saintly? So again, we go back to pratyaksha, personal experience. What defines my openness and my acceptance of sacred text, sacred personality, is that I've had some experience, enough experience, hopefully, with them that makes me feel this is something trustworthy. I can give my life here. I can open my heart here. But again, it all boils down to my personal experience, pratyaksha anumana. So in that sense, I will say Sanatana Goswami, he's saying, from all means of knowing, personal experience is the most important, because without personal experience, there's nothing, basically. Try to imagine. So, yeah, I open my heart to the guidance of Guru. I open my heart to the guidance of Shastra. I open my heart to the guidance of Sadhu. But why? Because I have some personal experience with all of them that makes me open my heart to them, makes me trust them. I cannot trust them without having a first-hand experience. I cannot trust them because someone else tells me that. If someone tells me that you should surrender to him because he's a pure devotee, how do I know? No. Maybe I met that person 5 minutes ago. I need to have some personal experience, right? Because many times, again, we just base our opinions on vox populi, on public opinion, loka vichar. Okay, that person is a saint. How do you know? Oh, because everyone says that. Do you know? Don't you think that that's the case? Will you dare to oppose public opinion? Sometimes that happens, not even in spiritual circles, everywhere. Many times conclusive thoughts, opinions, statements are taken based on what most people say. And the rest subscribe to that because they want to belong. They don't want to be a black sheep. They don't want to be exiled, ostracized. So many times we just follow. Okay, everyone is saying this. I'm supposed to have to agree with that, because if I do not agree with this particular narrative or with this particular dogma, even though I have no experience of that, I may be kicked out. So I think that for any healthy spiritual religious system to be healthy, sustainable, and promoting actual growth in their members, there has to be a promotion, an emphasis on anubhava pratyaksha, have your own experience in the context of guidance, in the context of revelation. But even again, in the beginning, if I have no experience of revelation, of Guru, of Shastra, all we have is whatever I will experience, and I will spend hopefully some time. That's why, for example, Sanatana Goswami will say, before accepting a guru and before accepting a disciple, if you're a guru, you should spend 1 year living together. So you have pratyaksha, anubhava, personal experience of the relationship, and then you can make an informed choice. And ideally, again, before you marry someone, before you take some big step in your life, have enough personal experience so you can take an informed step and choice. So we find that throughout. Pratyaksha, pramānasya śreṣṭhayāt, anubhava pramānasya śreṣṭhayāt, what Sanatana Goswami says here, which again is not in contradiction with what Jiva Goswami says. Shabda, the revelation from the scripture, is supreme. That in itself is a form of pratyaksha, the personal experience of Vyasadeva in trance in this case. And I can only understand that by me having some type of pratyaksha, by me being in touch. I can recall in my personal case, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and it was interesting. I first read the Bhagavad Gita, a short edition, almost without commentaries, a few years before I was probably, 16 or something. And I just went through a few verses from chapter 1, and it had no big introduction, no commentary. So I didn't feel this is very interesting. It was just a long list of names and people in the two sides of the army. I felt like, this is a book about war. What's this? I put it back. It was not my moment. I'm not criticizing the book, the edition, anything. But I didn't have the pratyaksha. That's my point. I didn't have the personal experience. Wow, this is revelation. This is divine knowledge. Then a few years after, when I was like maybe 18, I went again through the Bhagavad Gita. In this case, it was Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. It is big introduction, comments, details, and of course, I was also in a particular place in my life internally. So this time, it was revelation. I had the personal experience. I had the pratyaksha. I read the whole book, I think, in 2 days. I was devouring it, and I was being devoured by it in a good sense of the term. I have a very undeniable epiphany. This is all that I was looking for. This is giving me all these answers that I'm looking for, answers to questions that even dare to consider, and so on. But I had that experience. Something similar happened with chanting the names of Krishna. I remember still today, I was chanting with a mala that I made with rope, and I make some knots. I got to make 64 knots because the rope was not long enough. And one day I had a unique experience. I cannot explain it, didn't even put it in words. And again, it was not my personal merit. It was an unmerited gift. It was clearly unconditional grace, irreversible grace, as I like to call it. There's no coming back from that. The same with the Bhagavad Gita. It was an epiphany, a gift. But I had the experience. I was having the experience. It was given to me. It was a gift, but I had the experience. Unless that's the case, I cannot give myself to that. I cannot start chanting or forcing myself to accept the Gita as Shastra if I haven't had a transformative experience as such. So that's why we need to allow and promote people to have experiences. Whether if you are coming from day one to a wisdom tradition and you need to have all the experiences you need to have, or if in time you become a committed member and you already have certain perimeter and parameter and body of knowledge and guidance, still you have to have your own experiences in the context of that. Which doesn't mean that we have to, how to say, expect certain things to happen in a certain way. Wanting to control the experience. I need to have and then this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen. Not necessarily. But we need to have some experience. In some cases, we may not have in certain experiences. We may need to go through some liminal space, dark night of the soul. But still, in that case, we are having an experience. Probably we're being invited to the actual experiences we need to have. But at the end of the day, that's the conclusion, going back to the line of Sanatana Goswami. Sarva-pramāṇānāṁ ca madhye'nubhava-pramāṇasya śreṣṭhayāt. I mean, all pramānas, all means of knowing, the best one is the pramāna of experience. Recently, I was also reading something from Srila Siddhar Maharaj, which is somehow very much connected to that in his own words, very uniquely. I like to share that with you also. He says, he's speaking about common sense. Common sense as, so to say, parallel with personal experience. He says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeats Shankaracharya through common sense. This is the unique characteristic of his argument. He defeats his philosophical opponents not with difficult abstract intellectual arguments, but with common sense. In this way, by applying common sense, intuition, we may judge the nature of reality. Intuition will be far more helpful than abstruse argument. Vedanta confirms this in the aphorism Tarkva Pratishtana. Argument can never help us reach any real conclusion. Rather, it is only intuition and common sense that can really help us. So somehow this is connected with the idea of our personal experiences that confirm certain things. At the end of the day, Krishna is in our heart. God is the intimate most person in our existence. And if we pay close attention, if we do a little bit of silence, we open ourselves to prayer, our personal experiences will always tell us, even if we made a mistake, even if we are not perfect, who is perfect, who doesn't make a mistake, still that personal experience can teach us so much. Like Krishna says in the Gita, you better do your thing wrongly, perform your duty imperfectly, that someone else is perfectly. You better have your personal experience than trying to have someone else's personal experience. That's not possible to begin with. So better to be aligned, embrace the principle that personal experience is quote unquote all we have, and that is more than enough. So we are open to live a real experiential life, a real experiential spiritual practice, which is based on experiences. We are progresses, we are growing, we are choosing to continue to practice and embrace this lifestyle based on what we are experiencing on a daily basis. So I'll leave you with that question: how we can make my daily life, my daily practice, something really experiential. What may need to shift, what may need to be adjusted. Please let me know your thoughts, your comments, and we can continue in this ongoing conversation for a new chapter next week of Living Scripture. See you then.